Welcome, everybody. My name is Jackie Mancuso, and today I am joined by Dawn. I want to make sure I'm saying your last name right. Can you say it for me?
Santucci.
That's what I thought. Dawn Santucci. I met Dawn kind of at a random way. I went to the store called The Journey's Path, which I have interviewed a couple other people who are affiliated with that store. I went to The Journey's Path for a shamanic healing circle, and it happened to be canceled that night. And this new charismatic aerial yoga teacher said, "Well, you're here anyway. You might as well take my class." So I took the class just on a whim, and Dawn was in the class, and we didn't talk. I just noticed her. And then a few days later, I went to a networking event at this shop, and Dawn was there at the networking event. And that's how it started unfolding. And then every time I go to the Journey's Path, I run into Dawn now. So we're obviously meant to talk. But what I know about Dawn is that she was a clinical psychologist, and then she went through a wide awakening in 2020, like a lot of us. And now she has moved away from the mainstream to do healing on her own terms.
Yep.
So, Dawn, feel free to introduce yourself and let us know what you're doing on the earth these days.
Thank you, Jackie. Yeah, so I actually very recently accepted a new position at the Journeys Path. So I am now their wellness center manager. So the Journeys Path has both a metaphysical store and a wellness center. And so people do practice out of the wellness side, that's like the aerial yoga and the shamanic healing. And so I am now managing all of the practitioners that practice out of the center. So I'm here a lot more. But in addition to that, I do have my own healing business, which I launched in January of 2024. Yes, do you want to hear about the awakening part or my business? Both?
Let's let's start with the awakening and bring us to where you are now.
Okay. Yeah, so I got my doctorate in clinical psychology in 2007. And at that time, I also did specialty training in hypnosis. And I had always loved hypnosis. I really found it to be a very powerful healing modality, like much more powerful than just traditional therapy. And my original intention with the hypnosis actually was to do birth hypnosis to help women have natural childbirth experiences. Though that just was never the direction that my life took. I actually put the hypnosis aside and really wasn't even using it. It just wasn't the way that my life was going. And then, 2020 came and the whole world shut down. And of course, you're home wondering, okay, what now with my life? And I was already kind of thinking at that point, like I needed something different to do, that I wasn't totally fulfilled with the way my life was going. And at that time, I had learned about Dolores Cannon and Brian Weiss. And for those who don't know, they write about past life regressions. They've got really great books chronicling thousands of, participants that they took under and got their stories of, remembering past lives in the spiritual realm. And I was so fascinated by these stories because, prior to that point, I probably would have called myself an agnostic. I've always been pretty anti-mainstream religion. I really didn't find anything to believe. I wasn't sure what I believed in, but that really anchored me into believing that there was more than just this life. And so I decided I really wanted to learn those techniques or learn how to do past life regression. So that was where it started, was I took a course to learn past life regression. And while I was in that course, I met a lot of really interesting people who do a lot of interesting things, kind of like the people I'm surrounded by now at the Journey's Path. But prior to that, I was not surrounded by those kind of people. I didn't really know much about energy healing or all these other really interesting things that people can do. And what started happening though is, so in the class you're practicing with other people, and when I was getting to know people one on one, and a lot of these people had psychic abilities or mediumship abilities or just different things, and I was getting a consistent message from people that, like, you're here to do healing work. So I didn't really know what that meant, but I became interested in just learning about energy healing and learning it for myself, just to see, could I feel the energy? Could I affect other people with energy? So I started with Reiki and I went through the whole Reiki certification. And then from Reiki, it just kind of, I don't even know, what was first, what was next, because then I just started doing other things. So I've also learned quantum touch, I've learned Lahochi, which are just different other energy healing modalities. And in that time, I also started buying tuning forks. And so one tuning fork led to another, led to another. I have over 50 tuning forks at this point, so I love my tuning forks. Um, there's a whole nother interesting story in there too. So the main energy healing I use is actually called the body code. It is not Reiki. I just don't personally, I mean, I like Reiki. I think it's great for all kinds of things. And for the people who do it, that's what they're meant to do. I didn't feel like Reiki was my thing.
Mhm.
And so I was kind of torn. Do I do the tuning forks? Do I do the hypnosis? What do I do? And then of course I decided to do both. But also in there was this guy that popped into my life that through the hypnosis classes that just said to me, "Have you ever heard of the body code?" I was like,
Mhm.
"No, I've never heard of the body code." And he said, "You should get the book." And then he kind of disappeared. We were supposed to practice on each other and he disappeared. But I got the book, and that's ultimately my thing. What I really love, probably the most of everything they do, is called the body code. So we can talk more about that later if you're interested. But
For sure.
ultimately, I do a whole bunch of random things. So I do regular hypnosis. I do past life regression hypnosis. I do tuning fork therapy. I still do some mainstream psychology things. So, like while I was in psychology, I learned how to do EFT tapping, emotional freedom technique, and like EMDR, just the eye movement reprocessization technique, havening, those kind of things. And then, of course, the hypnosis. So I do, not only past life regression, but hypnotherapy. So I have different techniques that actually are therapeutic under hypnosis, and it's just a very powerful way of doing therapy and releasing, deep traumas, deep emotions, things like that.
When you work with your clients now, is it more of an intuitive sense? Like, do you plan what you want to do with your client before they're sitting with you, or is it when you sit down, you kind of sense what they need and you take out of your toolbox what you have?
Typically, we'll have a conversation first, and some of them come to me wanting a very specific thing. And so, depending on what they say to me, I might suggest something else. And usually, they're open to switching if I feel something else is better.
Sure.
But it's usually planned before we sit down. The only time it might be kind of spontaneous is when I do the mini expos, and they come in kind of, I couldn't decide which of your services to choose. What do you think? But
Sure.
um, generally, we know
Sure.
beforehand. But I do combine them, and so when I'm doing like sound healing, I'm also doing energy healing at the same time. Or when I do the body code, sometimes I pull out tuning forks. And I do a lot of my work remotely. And even with the tuning forks, you actually can use them remotely. That's not as enjoyable for people who enjoy the sound, whatever, but the vibration can affect people remotely. And so sometimes if I'm doing a remote session and I feel like they need some forks, I'll pull some forks out. And so I do combine them.
Interesting. I think
Mhm.
it's interesting that you do the body code now because the first time I ever received Reiki, the lady also used the body code. So
Hmm.
I know now that they're not the same thing, but I did always attribute them to be very, very similar. And I have used the joke that Reiki is like the gateway drug of energy
Mhm.
healing, right? Everyone learns Reiki and then they start to spiral off in their own ways. So in what ways have you found that the body code works? What are some of like the biggest stories you have from the body code?
I have so many amazing stories. I mean, really. I mean, it started with myself. So when I was learning it, I at that time was suffering very severe migraines, which started when I was a teenager, and they progressively got worse. And by the time that I learned the body code, I was waking up almost daily. Like I would just wake up and feel it. I mean, they weren't so debilitating that I couldn't go on with my life, but it was this like pain behind my eyes that I had, every morning, and sometimes it lasted all day, and it was just becoming to be unbearable to, live with. And so that was the first thing. So I actually had a head injury when I was 10 years old. And one of the things that came up was I had trapped physical trauma energy. And then, of course, there was some trapped emotional trauma energy with it. And then other trapped emotions just from my whole life accumulating. And so once I released that stuff, my migraines went away. And so after it worked on myself, I reached out to my mother and asked her, like, do you have anything that I could, try this out on? And at that point, she was going through some pretty severe chronic fatigue. And so after I did it, like that completely went away. Like she joked that she lives in Georgia, that she could get in the car and drive to Chicago, which would be hard for her to do because she's older, anyway, but that's how good she felt.
Yeah.
And so from there, I mean, I have some pretty miraculous stories. I've helped two women who were struggling to get pregnant. I've helped a couple, like one particular woman who reached out to me. She was extremely desperate, and she was not really into alternative medicine. She actually worked in mainstream medicine, but she was at risk of losing her job because she just had, well, she had trauma after trauma after trauma, and it really had accumulated. She just was so frazzled. I mean, she had become what appeared to be almost like ADHD, but like she couldn't focus on her job. And her boss was really concerned, like, if you can't get this together, we're gonna have to let you go.
Mhm.
And she had tried medication after medication and different things. Like, no, she was just getting worse. And so after I helped, released all that trauma and all the emotion that she had stored in her, she like was totally fine. So I have so many stories like that. But it's great for, physical pain, especially physical pain that you don't know that it has like, if you sprain your ankle, that's obviously not an emotional cause. But a lot of people have these chronic pains that just persist, and they've gone to the doctor and they've taken medication and nothing is helping it. That's usually an emotion. And so I've helped people with pain. The other thing, because one of the things I did at the Journey's Path was actually a weight loss hypnosis class. And some of the women in there had tried all kinds of things and they can't lose the weight. And hypnosis does help. But a lot of times if you eat well and you exercise and you've done all the things and you still can't get the weight off, it's usually due to trapped emotions. So, you release the emotions, you're releasing emotional baggage as well. So
Would you give us a rundown of how you use the body code and what it would look like if someone were to have a session with you?
sure. So the body code is a type of energy healing. It's I like it because I call it like the left-brained energy healing because even though I am in this woo-woo field now, I am very left-brain kind of scientific sort of person. And so the guy who developed it, his name is Bradley Nelson, and he does have a book that all of you can buy and learn his technique. He started with the emotion code, which was just releasing trapped emotions, and then he expanded it to include so much more. So within the body code, there's actually over 800 different imbalances you can find,
Wow.
and it includes all like physical tissues in your body, all organs, all glands, all muscles, all bones. Um, it includes like your whole energy system, so all your chakras and meridians. It includes pathogens, so things like mold or parasites, fungus, bacteria, viruses, those kind of things. It includes toxins, so they could be environmental, like agricultural toxins, pesticides, uh, heavy metals, those kind of things. And within the emotional realm, it not only includes emotions that you've accumulated in your own life, but it can find things from a past life. It can find things that were inherited. And so when you combine all the different things it can find, it's over 800 imbalances. But you don't have to have an app to do it, but it's almost impossible to do it without an app. So I do have like it's a mapping system that he created. And so basically what I do is the person tells me, what their issue is, and I hold that in my intention. And then I use applied kinesiology to determine the root cause of that imbalance. So I'm using the app while I hold the intention. And so I'm just, it's like, it starts with 6 things. And so I get the category, and then within that category, there's more categories, and then I get that category, and it keeps going down until I get to the root.
Mhm.
Once I understand what the root problem is, I'm able to just release it in a very simple way. And sometimes I do combine different energy healing techniques, but Bradley Nelson's technique, which works just perfectly fine, is actually taking a magnet and just running it. If the person is in front of me, I run it over their governing meridian. If I'm working remotely, what I'm doing is using myself as a proxy and just running it over my own. So if I had a magnet in my hand, I'm literally just going like this while I'm intending to clear that particular thing. And I can't explain how or why it works. All I can say is that 100% does. That I have helped people literally all over the world. I've worked with people in Europe, people all over the country, and every time it works. So I don't, other than I really do believe that within the quantum realm, there's no such thing as time, space, or distance, that we're all connected, we're all one, and so we can influence each other instantaneously no matter where we are. Of
Mhm.
course, I believe that, but it's still remarkable to me that this technique that is seemingly so simple has such powerful results.
Yeah, it seems like literal magic.
Oh, it
Does it
does. It
does it
does.
work with things like limiting beliefs or like people who feel stuck, like they can't attract a relationship or they can't attract a job? Does it work with those kind of things too?
It does. And specifically with relationships, there's something that a lot of people have called a heart wall, which is a literal emotion wall around the heart. And so that is often the case if you're attracting the wrong kind of person, or you're not attracting anyone, or even if you feel like you can't connect to your authentic self, that's usually the reason. There are some beliefs within it, like there's specific kind of things called like despair anchors, which is kind of a faulty belief you have that keeps you anchored in a bad mental place, basically. There's things called broadcast messages, which are things you kind of project off of yourself that other people unconsciously pick up. So like if you're sending out a broadcast signal like I'm not lovable, other people pick that up unconsciously, and they believe you're not lovable because that's what you're telling them to believe about you. So it basically affects how other people interact with you. There's a few other kind of beliefs in there. He did develop a whole separate system called the belief code, and that's not one that I'm trained in at this point. But I
Oh,
do know there is someone who works out of the Journeys Path that is. So if there's anyone who wants that done, I'm not completely familiar with it because he hasn't written a book, and I'm trained in that one. But so
mhm.
there are some beliefs, like kind of faulty beliefs, you can get in the body code. But for a full belief overhaul, you'd want the belief code probably.
Super interesting. So it's a cure for anything. Well, I guess
Yeah.
we're shied away from using the word cure, right? Because we can get sued for that kind of stuff, but it can solve a lot of issues.
It
Do you
can.
notice
It can.
do you notice a difference in the results when people come in and they're just kind of nonchalant about, nah, well, let's see what's going on, versus the people who come in and they're just so desperate to fix this issue? Is there a difference in how they heal?
I wouldn't say there's a difference in how they heal, but if you don't and you don't have to tell me, you can just say like I want to see what you find. But what that does is it sets your subconscious up for saying what's most important. And what your subconscious sees as the most important things you need to let go of might not necessarily be the things that you feel like are most important to let go of. And what I have found is that like so for example, someone might say to me like um I have this pain in my shoulder that won't go away. And so then I'll do the body code, and then that pain will go away. And they'll say something like, well, that pain went away, but I still feel depressed. And I would say, well, like you didn't tell me you felt depressed. So once they tell me they feel depressed, then I get a whole new set of things. So sometimes I'm only getting access to the things that I've been given explicit permission to look into.
Mhm.
Now, if there is something that's really big and really impacting you, I probably will be given permission by your subconscious mind. But if it's something else that's just bugging you and you don't tell me explicitly, I'm not necessarily going to find it. So the more information you give me, the more I can fully help you. And I think some people use it as a test to say like, well, I'm not going to tell her anything. Let's see what she finds. And that's fine. You know, I do find things, and some people will be surprised. Like traumas will come up with like ages that things happen, and they'll say, you know, I was whatever abused at this age, or I did fall off my bike at this age, and you know, they get surprised that I'm finding things like that. So sometimes, but it is better the more specific you can be. And then I have people who will tell me, you know, again, like, oh, my shoulder hurts, and then I'll take care of that, and they'll say, you know what, the arthritis in my knee also went away. I didn't even tell you about that. So sometimes different pains on your body are connected to the same root, and so
Mhm.
when you release that root, other things might change. So it just all depends if they share that root or not.
Very interesting. The way that you're
Mhm.
describing the body code, to me, it seems like anyone can go to you to have the body code done and they can solve all their problems. But what would make someone qualify for like hypnosis? Why would someone benefit from that over the body code?
I would say hypnosis is good for someone who really has problematic thinking, you know, like, so it's more than just releasing a trapped kind of belief, but they really have a problematic way of thinking in the world that they want to change. Because hypnosis is good for really reprogramming the subconscious mind. So whether that's with weight loss, like the last class I've been running, helps you change, you know, how you view food and how you view exercise, and even how you view yourself within your own relationship to food. So like if you want to change those kind of things, that's where hypnosis helps. I would think a combination is good. And I actually didn't even tell this to my hypnosis clients, but I actually did release on each of them their top emotion related to weight loss, you know, just to kind of amplify it.
Sure.
Um, so I think all of the things I do have a place, and sometimes they work well together.
Absolutely. Can you put yourself back in the mindset of pre-spiritual awakening and how you viewed and used hypnotherapy then versus what has changed for you now?
Yeah, I think I didn't really think of it as an energy healing modality then. I really see it as an energy healing modality now. Um, I mean, I guess the main thing that's changed also is or realizing how important intention is in everything you do, no
Mhm.
matter what it is. I mean, whether it's sound healing, energy healing, or even if it's just talking to someone or doing hypnotherapy, your intention is very important in the space that you come from. And so, of course, I always hold, a loving space for everyone and come with that. But I'm much more intentional with it now. And I really I really like the QHHT stuff, the past life regression, but of course, I will do other kinds of hypnotherapy too. So I think it does work to reprogram the subconscious mind, but I also really think it's releasing things on an energetic level too. And I just never appreciated that or understood that before.
Sure. Can you tell me what QHHT stands for?
It's quantum healing hypnosis technique. So that's Dolores Cannon's specific technique that she used for past life regression.
Got it. And Dolores Cannon was one of the triggers that helped you awake, yes?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was
I mean,
there
that was kind of my first like foot into it, was just wanting to learn that and then meeting these other interesting people doing interesting things that I had never, not that I'd never heard of it, but I just was not part of that world. I didn't really know much about it. I mean, it never really resonated with me, even within the field of psychology, that like if someone is talking to a plant or a rock, that means they're schizophrenic, and I really don't feel that now because I have all kinds of friends that can talk to plants and rocks and, and crystals and things, and I certainly don't think they're crazy.
uh
So, but that really never resonated with me, even going through psychology, that because someone can hear something that you can't or see something that you can't means that they're crazy. That was kind of just a side note, but yeah, that yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I get that. Because like I told you before we went live, I was a public school teacher and I felt like there were just so many rules and standards that didn't align with me, but I wasn't aware of why it didn't align with me. And I just knew that I had to break out of it and I had to get somewhere where I could be more in control of my rules and how I wanted to teach. I think
Mhm.
it's an important message for people to hear, especially people who are in careers or whatever types of jobs where they have to follow the rules and they just know that they're not meant for these rules. But I think we're a good example of people showing that you can break free. You don't have to follow rules that don't make sense to you.
Right. I've always hated diagnoses. I always hated them because they don't mean anything, even within the medical profession. I mean, if you're told you have cancer, I mean, it gives you a label for, what's going on in your body, but it doesn't tell you anything about the root issue with it. And no matter what your problem is, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, if you don't get at the root, you're only bandaging up the problem. So that's why I love what I do now, because I feel like I'm really affecting people at a deep root level, for actual transformational change, not just kind of bandaging something up, or you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's definitely I still have a hard time understanding how people can't know that. And I'm trying to say this very eloquently. Like I never understood people who are in the medical profession who are trained to just give a prescription. And you can clearly see that it's not healing the person. They're just coming back for the same prescription. The lack of investigatory, like how do we get to the bottom of this, that has never resonated with me. That's an
Yeah,
interesting
me either.
perspective.
Me either. Yeah. So I'm so happy that I actually have a way. I think that another thing that happened too around the same time as the QHHT, Dolores Cannon, was that I learned of this woman named Kelly Brogan, and she calls herself a holistic psychiatrist. But from her, I started learning that a lot of what I learned in school wasn't even, I'd say, on the mild end, just slightly off or not all inclusive, but on the other end, like completely false. But she talked a lot about the gut and the gut brain connection and how a lot of these things we see with ADHD, anxiety, depression, even things like schizophrenia are related to gut health or gluten intolerance. And I know further now, like learning about the medical medium, like a lot of it really is related to toxins and pathogens. And so, like, I mean, I knew that at some level, but I didn't really realize how much it affects your psychology, you know. So a lot of people, and people tend to really identify with their diagnoses, which it never resonated with me either. You know, it's like they get this label and that just becomes who they are. And their belief about it really creates their reality too. And so really trying to break away from that and getting people to see that they can let go of the labels and stuff.
Hmm. I watch myself with that as well, especially being an astrologer. I try to detach myself from I am a Taurus or I have this Mercury in Aries, because I see how much the labels can detract you from getting to the root of your issue, right? And I align with you as well. I feel like labels, when they're taken to the extreme, they can be used as a way of keeping yourself in victim mode. You know, oh, woe is me, I have this issue, so therefore I can't do these things in my life. Where you take the issue, you take the label away, and then you figure out how you can do whatever you want in your life.
Exactly.
Was there anything other than Dolores Cannon and the psychologist that you just mentioned, whose name I forgot?
Oh, Kelly Brogan.
Kelly Brogan, yes. Were those like the main players in your spiritual awakening, or was there another wave of people? What was your awakening like?
It just kind of happened slowly. So like I said, once I started intermingling with different people, um, and understanding that I actually could feel the energy. I mean, that was really surprising to me. Like once I started learning Reiki and learning that you can actually feel the energy flowing through you and flowing out of you. And then once I saw that I actually could affect other people were reporting positive results with me sending Reiki even long distance. I was like, wow, this is really, crazy. So like you said, it totally was a gateway drug. I mean, not only that into learning more energy healing, but the tuning fork and wanting more, and then learning about other, it's hard to know what really has exploded and what is just because my bubble has changed. But I mean, I feel like sound healing is everywhere at this point.
Mhm.
And tuning forks are just one kind. I mean, I've attended now different sound bowl healings and the gongs and the drumming sessions. It's another place we met was the drumming circle, which is awesome. So all of these different instruments play a role in releasing different things within you or activating different things within you. Um, so I don't, it's hard to put myself back in that pre-2020 mindset, really. It
Mhm.
happened gradually, yet I think it was incremental. Like there were certain jumps I had. I mean, there were sessions I had with particular people that I felt like jumped me up a level, kind of as far as opening up my intuition and intensifying the energy that I could feel and things like that. So I don't know. It's just been, I look at where I am today compared to even a year ago. Because like I said, I launched my business January of 24, and they started out okay. Like I wasn't super busy, and I was totally fine with just like kind of getting my feet wet and starting this and seeing, how effective am I being in people's lives. But I think my life really started to change at last June at the Oneness Fest, the Awake Oneness Tribe Fest, because that was the first place that I vended, and that was where I started meeting all these people, and that's really where I met the people that connected me to the journey's path, and that's really when my life totally began to change. And so where I am today compared to a year ago is I could have never even envisioned this for my life right now.
That's
Which is why
amazing.
they say when you manifest, you shouldn't be too specific because sometimes spirit has a vision for you that you can't even conceptualize.
Yeah, I love that. I needed that reminder right now. That's really nice to hear that someone else also did not have this like shocking awakening. There was a part of me that felt a little bit of guilt when I went through my awakening because it did happen slowly and naturally, as it sounds like yours did as well. It just unfolded. You meet these cool people. But then there's all those memes around the internet that say, like, oh, when you wake up and everything is different and you completely lose track of who you were, and then you go into this like crazy cycle. And I never had that. And I was kind of wondering, like, is it coming? Right? If everyone else has it, like, did I just skip over it? Am I anticipating it? So that it's affirming for me to hear that someone else also just gently woke up to all this. And it's
Yeah.
cool because it does seem just like a realignment with who you are. The sound healing, it's been around forever. I'm sure you've known what drum circles are forever. You've known what
Mhm.
music is forever, and now you're just seeing it in a different light. I think that's the coolest part. So what about okay, tuning forks. I understand them. I've had a tuning fork session, but I can be very practical with like the vibration goes on the part of my body to release the emotion or release the fascia, whatever. How do tuning forks work remotely?
Well, it's the vibration that really is important. So when people, and this is true of all instruments, but obviously the sound is very enjoyable and it's a totally relaxing, immersive experience when you have an in-person tuning fork session. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend a remote session to someone. But just like you can send energy healing to anyone, anywhere in the
Mhm.
world, you can send the vibration of the tuning forks. So I use it more as an adjunctive. I mean, if someone really was like, I really want you to do a tuning fork session for me long distance, I'm not going to say no, but I
Got
I I wouldn't necessarily like promote myself as a long distance tuning fork, person.
got it. So it can work if you need it to, but it's not your go-to method.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
then
because they're so enjoyable, in person. They just feel so good. They have this way. I love sound bowls. I love all of it. But for me, for my own healing, I really like the tuning forks. They're not as loud and as shocking as some of the, like if you've ever gone to a sound bowl session, it feels like that sound just like whirling through your head and it's a little intense. And there's a place for that. I like it. But for kind of daily stuff, I just love the tuning forks. And they have this way of just you just feel it just like centers your energy and kind of brings you back to 0 point, which is really where you need to be to get in the now moment and decide, okay, I'm at the 0 point. What am I going to choose for myself, right now? So it's a great place for manifestation and choosing, what are you going, what choices are you making now, with your health, with your relationships, with whatever. And so like I said, I have over 50 of them and they do they do all kinds of different things, but mostly it's about the intent. So with everything you do, you're holding an intention. And I have different protocols for different things. So like if someone came to me at the mini session, they can choose something for grounding or anxiety or pain or manifestation or spiritual enhancement. I've got all kinds of different, sessions they could choose. And so the same thing would be true with a longer session. It just would be more than one kind of mini session wrapped into one.
sure. So, excuse my ignorance, but when I think about 50 tuning forks, I'm just imagining like 50 different keys on a piano, like it would go up by the increments. Is that kind of how they work?
Kind of, but I mean, I have different sets of them. So like I have a solfeggio set, and a lot of people use the solfeggios for the chakras. They don't have to be used that way. Um, like the 528, which is associated with the solar plexus chakra, is seen as like the love frequency. It's seen as the master healer. Um, so I have like a Lemurian set, which I use for spiritual enhancement. I have a harmonic set, which is each interval is actually good for a different kind of thing. So the harmonic set is played in pairs versus the solfeggio set, which is just one fork, So there's different ways that they're used, but they don't have to, putting them on the body is one way that you can use them. There are body forks that are made for that purpose, but you actually can work in what's called like the biofield. And so I'm sure you're aware that your energy field extends like 6 feet around your body in all directions.
Mhm.
And so what has been discovered is that it's actually a map of your entire life. And so so it's kind of like the rings on a tree. So if you were to hold your hands out, that's about half of your life. If you would extend it further, that's your whole life. So if you go to the edge of your field, that's where all of the memories from like your birth are stored, and then childhood, and then teenage years. And then as you get closer, it's the stuff that happened to you more recently. And then different areas of the biofield are associated with different things. So there's like mother and father and past and future. And so certain energies will get lodged in different places. And so if you're working in someone's biofield, you actually can remove the trapped energies that way as well. And what the forks do is they actually act like a feedback mechanism. You'll hear it like when you strike a fork, it should sound a certain way. If you're in an area of like heavy energy or like a pocket of something trapped, it will make a noise that doesn't sound right, so you can hear it. Like it's telling you this something is not clear in this field, and you just hold it there, and then the sound will eventually clear as it clears the distortion in the field.
That's so cool. You kind of just blew my mind with that biofield explanation. I totally just forgot the question I wanted to ask you about that. Shoot. I don't know. I'm just super excited. We're going to be together on Saturday at that mini expo, and I'm excited to share sessions now and see what
Yeah,
we
yeah,
get
we
out of
can do that
everything.
for sure. Because I want to try the Opus sound bed too. I've heard cool things about it.
100%. There is actually a session called biofield tuning, so I wonder if that relates to any of this.
Interesting.
Very cool. What is something that you're learning now? What's your next new adventure, or are you good with your plethora of
I
modalities
mean,
now?
I have a lot. I have a lot, but now that I'm at the Journeys Path and I have access to all the amazing things that they have here, like the owner's going to show me in his room, he's just got all kinds of different sound bowls, and I don't even know, like different kinds of chimes and pyramid, like crystal pyramids. He has all kinds of stuff in there that I've never used. And so every morning I do go in there and kind of play around with some stuff, just give myself a little energy healing. But I've never been trained like on the gong or on the sound bowl. So he wants to train me on some of that stuff so that, especially because he's actually having surgery tomorrow. So his hand is going to be out of whack for like the next 8 weeks. So just in case someone wanted to come in for some sound healing so I could do another thing. Oh, actually, there are a couple more things too. So, also at the Journeys Path, they do have some cool technology. So, one of the things they have is actually called a Rife machine. They have the
Yeah.
Spooky 2 Rife machine. So, I've been learning that, and I think I've mastered it remotely. I still have to learn a little bit more how to use it in person sessions, but for those of you who don't know what a Rife machine is, if you look up Raymond Royal Rife, like back in the 50s, I think it was, he was discovering that frequencies could be used to target different pathogens and things in the body. And he was curing cancers, back in the 50s. And of course, all of that information was suppressed. But with the current Spooky 2 Rife machine, there's over 80,000. It's so overwhelming. There's over 80,000 frequencies in there that literally can do anything. So any problem you have, you can search within the machine and it will, I mean, it could be a weird disorder that like most people have never heard of and it might be in there. And they've discovered the frequencies that will help that. And these frequencies are actually used in hospitals in other parts of the world. So these frequencies are tested in like Germany and they're tested extensively before they're added to the Spooky 2 as a known frequency. So there are cancer programs in there, there's programs for all kinds of things, but even just basic things like removing negative emotions or clearing chakras or meridians, or there's even things in there like anti-aging programs, telomere lengthening programs. There's even been people who have grown hair back, reversed gray hair using these machines. So there's literally programs for everything. So right now it's at my home and I'm playing around with it, but eventually I'll bring it back here and that's going to be something we offer. They also have really cool red light pads, which are a medical device technology that use infrared technology to, improve circulation. They're good for pain and those kind of things. So I can do that here. And then they have a really cool crystal light bar here that's made. So it's a long bar and it has 7 crystals on it, and each crystal is attached to a light. So basically the chakra colors, so red through violet. And then there's some copper with sacred geometry twisted on there too. But basically you'll lay on the table with this crystal light bar over you and it feels incredible. It's really incredible. So I'm going to be offering that for the first time at the expo this coming weekend. And I'm also combining it. So if someone wanted to do like a combined emotion code crystal light therapy or tuning fork crystal light therapy, I'm going to be offering them together too. So
Such
there
a
is
fun.
other stuff. There's other stuff,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Have you noticed any difference between people who, like, have you had clients who are very skeptical about the modality? Like, have you had people
Mhm.
completely come in and try to test your skills?
It's happened twice. And I will say, you don't have to believe in it for it to work as long as you're open. If you really are like at the point, like the woman that I told you about, she said to me, I really don't believe this is going to work, but I'm so desperate. And it worked for her because she was open. So as long as you are open to, healing and to receive, it can work. But for the people who are like, nope, I know this won't work, like it won't. Like you can block the healing if you're just so like, I know this won't work. And so that's happened to me twice. But it was very clear to me that the person really was not open and was not interested in healing. And so, that's their own journey. So you don't have to believe, but you have to be open.
Absolutely. I have the same belief. If yeah, you can block anything, right? You can convince yourself that, saving money isn't going to work and then you're going to be broke forever. Your mind is so incredibly powerful. I think that's cool.
Mhm. Yep. And of course, it works both ways. I mean, I've had people say to me, like, how do you know it's not the placebo effect? And so, first of all, that question annoys me because if it was the placebo effect, what does it matter? I'm still I'm not saying I'm the one healing the person, they're healing themselves. So, if I'm eliciting something in the person that gets them to heal themselves, who cares what the mechanism is? The point is they're healing.
Right.
But I do know it's not only the placebo effect because I've done it on animals. I've done several animals, including my own dog, and I've experienced differences. But I've also learned that I actually can clear things like trees and things like spaces. Like I have removed entities from homes and things, and successfully. I've done it enough times that I've gotten feedback that it works. So those things cannot be the placebo effect. I mean, I guess unless the owner can somehow affect, I don't know, but um, to me, that's evidence that there is something actually going on beyond just the placebo effect. But the placebo effect tells you how powerful your mind is and that you can heal yourself if you choose to believe in yourself. And so use your mind wisely because you can heal yourself or you can make yourself sick.
Absolutely. I love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on today and having this chat with me. Before we leave, is there anything that you want to share with humanity? Right? Put you on the spot, this big question, but I know that we just ended talking about how powerful the mind is and how you can heal yourself. But through all the work that you've been doing, is there anything that you wish everyone on this earth could hear?
I guess it would be really that we are energetic beings. I just find that so many people are not open to believing in energy healing in general. And that's really unfortunate because we see ourselves as physical beings, but what we actually are is energetic beings. And anything that exists in you physically, if it's a pain or a sickness, whatever it is, it will exist energetically before it manifests in the physical. And if you take care of your energy, you can keep yourself well. But also, if you have a physical problem and you don't address the energetic component of it, you're not going to fully heal the problem. So it's very important to understand that you are an energetic being. And so energy healing comes in many forms. It's not only things like Reiki, but I mean, sound and frequency healing are a type of energy healing, or even light healing. All of those are forms of energy, and they all affect your body in different ways. Different people will resonate with different things. If you resonate with something, go for it. That maybe is what your body needs. But I would say listen to yourself, listen to your body. I think a lot of people have intuitions about things, like going to doctors and thinking, well, what they said doesn't really feel right, but that's what they said and they're the expert, so I'm going to go with it. I hear that so often. If something doesn't feel right about what you were told, don't just blindly believe a doctor because that's what they're telling you.
That. And where can my followers find you so they can contact you?
Well, I'm at the Journey's Path a lot, so they can find me here if they want to meet me. I work here from 10 to 2, pretty much Monday through Friday, and then I'm here sometimes on weekends for events. But if they would like to find me online, my business is Quantum Intuitive Healing. So .com would be the email. I have Facebook, which I use regularly. I have Instagram, which I'm not so great at, but hopefully we'll get better at. Yeah, so they can send me an email, stop by the store, whatever they want.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Wonderful talking to you.